Welcome to Savills. My name is Simon Shaw, old Radleian, former parent, current member of council. I think it's the 5th event we're holding here tonight. And one of the brilliant things I can see with the subject title of this event is that one can be an entrepreneur at any age, which is fantastic. Couple of bits and pieces before I introduce you to our esteemed chairman for tonight. First up is welcome. Second up is, you don't really necessarily think of Savills as being particularly entrepreneurial, but amongst, it was once, back in 1855 when it started. But one of the parts of my role is to run our PropTech investment fund, where we invest in startups out in the market that look interesting to us and help them grow. And I'm happy to talk to anybody about that later if you'd like to. I've got 2 adverts for you. One is, as you grow your businesses, you need space, and we're very good at that. But not only that, we're also very good in the flexible and co-working office space. So, as you look to grow, do consider an organisation called Work There, which happens to be powered by Savills, which gives you all of market, multi-country access to all flexible and co-working office space. Gives you advice around it. We get the best deals for you off the tariff rates, and the beauty is it doesn't cost you anything at all. So look for that, Work There. And the second one is, when you've made your gazillions and you want to buy a really nice house, you know exactly where to come. So apart from that, that's all I'm going to say. Welcome, have a great evening, be interactive. And I'd like to introduce you to Nick Christie of Jump 7, who's going to be your compare chairman for the evening. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Simon. Thank you. Thank you, Simon, and a big warm welcome to everyone here and people watching online or the recording. It's great to have you. Caroline was telling me earlier, this is the first live event that Radleian Life have managed to do in the last 2 years because of COVID, so it's great to have everyone here in person. And we've got a great panel for you tonight. So the topic for tonight is entrepreneurism in your early career. And I think it is important to say you don't have to set up your own business to be an entrepreneur. You can have an entrepreneurial spirit and approach to life. You don't have to set up your own business, although of course you can. We are all old Radleians of various ages. Very briefly, my background, I worked in online marketing for about 10, 15 years. And in that big sort of crash of 2008, I fancied doing something different. So I set up a business with a couple of mates, literally trying to find gaps in the market and making products, so gifts and housewares and toys and stuff, backed by a big advertising agency called BBH. We did that for about 10 years, floated on AIM and did lots of fun stuff, but then I fancied doing my own business. And so now what I do, the easiest way of explaining what I do is I help people who've been on Dragon's Den. They maybe had a product idea, but they want actual help getting that into retailers. So that's what I do, act like an outsourced sales director, helping people get their innovative new products into retailers. One other thing before I introduce the panel, I was discussing with Elizabeth and Thom at the end, just before we kicked off, that at Radley you learn an incredible amount of stuff about the academics and you have fun playing sport and all those kinds of things, but we didn't feel that maybe you learned an awful lot about the next 40 years of your life there, working and how that all works and entrepreneurial spirit. So we're hoping that tonight will help with that, and I know Caroline and Elizabeth are keen to foster more of that moving forward. Anyway, without further ado, we've got a great panel tonight. So what we're going to do is quickly give the guys 2 minutes to introduce themselves, and then we're going to do some questions. We have a few prepared, but please, this is really important. We'd love your questions, however brilliant or silly they may be. So please do think about some questions you'd like to ask during the evening, and we'd love to answer them as best we can. So without further ado, Thom, do you want to kick us off?
Why not? Why not? Can you hear me? Do I need this silly mic on, or can you not hear me? Should we have a vote? Can you hear me now?
They would like it at the back, I think.
Better now?
Yeah.
Days. Cool. Okay, I won't sing, I promise. Hi, my name's Thom. I run a pizza business called Pilgrims, which I started with my brother, who's also a Radleian, 10 years ago, pretty much, on a market stall just down the road from here. And I've had some of the scariest meetings of my life in this building, so that was fun. Nice to be back. That's it.
Freddy, go for it.
I can take more of my 2 minutes.
You have a lot. You can have mine.
I can have your you can do as well. So I left Radleian in 2006. I went to Edinburgh University, and after university I stayed outside Edinburgh, and I ran a hospitality business for 5 years. During that period, it was based out in the countryside. During that period, I constantly needed to lend my car to people. I needed to borrow other people's cars, and I found myself on the phone to the car insurer a lot. And I thought it was pretty ridiculous that you couldn't buy an hour of insurance to borrow a car. And so I set out to create a mobile app that allowed you to do that. Fast forward 8 years now, we're 130 people. We have a mobile app that 650,000 people have used. We'll sell £50 million of insurance this year, and we're still growing strong, growing to the moon.
Rory.
Rory, I left in 2011. I went to Durham, quite a classic route, and then 2 years in I actually dropped out to start my first business, which was a sports meetup app. We raised a small amount of angel funding and went out to the States to go and launch it. It ultimately didn't work out, and in hindsight it was probably a bit of a jolly. Came back and then pivoted it a number of times into what became like a software to rewards business. But in any case, after 4 years, it closed down, and then I took all those lessons and had another crack about 2.5 years ago, which is what I'm doing now, which is in data compliance. So it's a bit more niche, but it's kind of based on my lessons of wanting to do something that people were already paying for, there was a need, and all these other sort of things. And this time I didn't take any funding. We're now a team of 9, going on 11, and we're not quite out there, if you remember.
You'll be there
Stay
soon.
tuned.
Brilliant, thanks Rory. Okay, Hugo, finally.
Hi guys, I'm Hugo. Like every Radleian on the panel or in this room, I really branched out, went to Exeter, pushed the boat out. I left in 2015 and have always been sort of in and around startups. By doing so, I actually ended up working for Cuvva, working for Freddy, and have recently left to start a company and working with a number of ideas in data and e-commerce. I've been fortunate enough to be backed by a talent investor, which is a really weird concept where these people back me pre-idea, pre-team, and see what I can build. So whereas these guys are all pretty established, building really impressive companies, I'm literally day zero, very naive and very fresh. So yeah.
It's good. I've got a mic, but thank you, Hugo. Thanks to everyone. So do think of some questions, guys and girls. But we've just got 1 or 2 to kick things off. And we did do an online event in January. We went through some other questions. So we're trying to, if some of you attended that, we're trying to do some different ones. Freddy, we're going to start with you. And the question is, how did you get into the mindset of your customers and find out what they wanted?
So I was explaining to a couple of current boys, current Radleians, just before we came in here, that the far and away the best way to start a business is to solve a problem that you personally currently have. And it can be one that you've identified in your personal life or in your work life, but otherwise the product management experience that you have to go through to get in the mindset of somebody who has a different problem set to you is really, really hard and extremely risky, and you actually have to go through a very, very long period of learning to understand how to do that properly. I'm sure you were able to understand that you wanted delicious pizza, and I was able to understand that I needed an hour of insurance to borrow someone's car, and I had a very, very clear vision of what I needed to build because I was building it for myself. And every time subsequently that I've tried to build something else that I was like not completely sure about, but the research said it was great, it's always been a complete failure. And so the absolute North Star for me is building something that I want, and I don't settle until that exact thing exists.
That's a great answer. Just one thing I will say is some of the answers we give tonight, we do have to understand it in the context of what we've been doing, or the answers. They may not all be relevant for everyone, so certain tips and stuff, they may not be right for every single individual. We just have to bear that in mind. Great, thank you, Freddy. Thom, one for you. You're in the pizza world. How do you continue to innovate and maybe differentiate once you became established?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think you get that kind of like, what's your elevator pitch? And I've been over 10 years and I don't have an elevator pitch. But I think it is really important to innovate. And I think our biggest example recently was obviously during COVID when our strategy document slightly went out the window in March 2020, and we didn't really know what to do. And we decided to, you'll all be aware of this concept now, but at the time we were like, my brother basically contacted me and was like, look, I'm going to send you some pizza ingredients through the post. How do you feel about that? And I was like, that is a rubbish idea, full stop. So he did that, and it turned up, and yes, it looked like an elephant that sat on it, and it was a complete rubbish idea. But it was cold, which was interesting. So he just wrapped it in sheep's wool, and then sent it through the post. So anyway, we were like, after about 2 weeks of the pandemic, when we finally managed to get a store open, we were like, wouldn't it be fun to do 50 of these kits, where we basically put the dough, the pizza dough that we've made, the tomato sauce, the cheese, the mozzarella, everything in one box, send it to you, and then over Instagram we can show you how to make a pizza at home in a frying pan, which is kind of quite, if you make pizza at home, make it in a frying pan, unless, I bet 90% of people here have got an uni, actually, to be fair. It's definitely a couple of knowing smiles. Haven't used it for 2 years either. So we had this idea. Wednesday morning we were like, let's put 50 up and see if we could sell them by the end of the week. And we put them up, put it on Instagram. We sold the first 50 in 20 seconds. Wow. We were like, okay. And then on Thursday we did the same. On Friday we were like, we either take the sensible route here, which is slowly figure out how we can build our manufacturing thing, and then slowly release more as we get our act together, or we just try and sell as many pizzas as we can in 1 hour. So we were like, 2,000 pizzas, that couldn't possibly sell. We sold them in 50 minutes. It's still the busiest hour of trading of Pizza Pilgrims ever. To the extent that, I'm going to bore on, but I'm going to keep going because it's my only story, so I have to. It's my moment, guys. Don't let me down. So this happened, and it went really big. We were doing more sales on that than we were doing in restaurants before. And then got this call up from number 10 being like, can you talk to us about pivoting your business? Long story short, on a call with Boris, believe it or not, talking about pivoting your business. And I was like, Boris, let me bring you a pizza. And he was like, absolutely, that'd be bloody brilliant. And then so I emailed the aide after the call, and it was like, Boris said he wanted to bring a pizza. And she replied being like, really kind of you, but obviously I've spoken to security, absolutely no chance you can bring pizzas number 10, but thank you for involving yourself, and great, see you again. A week later, got another email from the same aide being like, I've just been in a meeting with Boris and he asked where his pizza was. So I literally, with my brother, went to number 10, brought in some pizzas in this, for him to make at home. And then 2 days later, I got another call from Boris saying, what are you doing on the 11th of July? Me and Rishi want to come and talk to you about reopening restaurants. So I sat at a table like this and talked mostly with Rishi, because Boris was trying to figure out how to use his phone, about opening restaurants again. And that was probably the most innovative I'll ever be. So after that, I reckon we just carry on making pizzas and eat it out.
It's a great story. And do you still sell them like that?
We still sell them like that. It was a full crazy thing, because it went like that to just insane scale that we couldn't have made up. And then we went on Ocado, and then it's basically slowly ebbed away. So it still makes a bit of money, but now we're like, is this something we actually want to pursue, or is it just holding us back from doing? Because the pizzeria is obviously now the world is back, it turns out. So it's been a very, very interesting couple of years.
Brilliant. But your top tip is make pizzas in a saucepan.
Top tip is go to a pizzeria.
Unless COVID strikes again.
Yeah, let's not talk about that.
Good, that's great fun. Thank you very much. Rory, we've got a question for you. Which I'm sure some people are thinking about. How did you pitch your business ideas? How did you go about that? That side of things.
Sure. I'm just thinking with the first business, there was probably sort of 4 or 5 different incarnations along the way, and at each point got slightly better at kind of pitching it, to the point where we started getting some quite serious meetings. So there was one, and again, kind of thinking behind it was more, let's lead with, a story or a pitch as if this product is working already when it really wasn't. And we managed to get a meeting with some gift gaff execs, because we were pitching this kind of white label rewards product for their kind of top-up pay-as-you-go customers. But ultimately, we managed to get the meeting using quite sort of innovative or kind of well-narrated kind of story to kind of get in there. But then ultimately got in there, had the meeting, and where the demo completely fell apart because it was just a series of screenshots and kind of manually making it kind of beat together. And actually at the end, 2 of them didn't shake our hands and kind of walked straight out. So that didn't really go down as best it could. There's other scenarios maybe more recently where we've done a lot of time with, there's like a customer research methodology called Jobs to be Done, which has been a really nice way for us to kind of pull out how do people actually understand this, how do they think about the problem that we're solving, and that again just being led by how the customer understands it using their own language, and that side of things has ultimately provided the most kind of impactful marketing language that we now use, and it's definitely been a bit more successful than that.
You've pitched me a couple of times. You're not bad.
Hugo, do you want to add to that? Because you're doing something a little bit different, and about how you approach the people you're now working with, and how do you express your ideas and what to do?
So I'm in a very different stage where I don't have a company yet. So I need to pitch it. I need to get honest feedback to work out if I'm barking at wrong tree, if there's something to be invalidated as opposed to be validated. And I'm using this framework called the MOM test, which is a kind of like a countercurrent to how you should talk to your mum. When you talk to your mum, you say, "Hey mum, I've got this amazing idea," and she'll tell you it is amazing. And you should not do that with potential customers. You should essentially go to your customers and not tell them anything about the idea. And so you should ask them about themselves, listen to what they're struggling with, what their day-to-day looks like. And then very quickly you'll work out what their problems are without you feeding them their problems. And if they don't mention your problem, they don't care about what you're building. And so you need to be perfectly aligned with your customer and the problem they face. And so at the moment, I'm just listening to people telling me about their problems. And so far we've had some really interesting examples. We were chatting to construction companies, trying to hope to build a buy now, pay later product for them. And none of them said that late finance was a problem for them. Instead, they said like getting materials was a problem for them, or like shipping the materials was a problem. So we killed that idea very quickly. We're now on to the next one, which is e-commerce data.
Have some of the answers given you new ideas, or there's been some common ground?
They have the e-commerce data is really hard to get hold of, and we've kind of validated that assumption, and we're going a bit deeper and peeling several layers deeper into that.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Okay, one for you, Freddy. How have you found investors and got their attention?
So as an entrepreneur, your sort of primary role is actually to build a valuable business, and to try and always sort of build ahead of the sort of the next business like a venture round. So I have a venture-backed business. So Cuvva has raised sort of over £20 million so far to get to the stage we're at today, and we'll probably end up raising a lot more money. Obviously, you could go and build a completely different type of business that has good cash flows and it's a great lifestyle business, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Like pizza.
Like pizza, delicious pizza, which will probably end up being much more valuable than There's just what I've learned over the last 8 years. There's no such thing as winning or losing. It's just like, are you happy? Are you content with with the outcome? And that's actually really important to know going in. And try and keep checking with yourself, like, are you actually happy on this journey that you're going on? Because a lot of people end up in absolute hell going through these journeys, and actually there's something that will, there's a different alternative path that there's absolutely no shame in going down. But in terms of getting investors, I've got investors now sort of several different times. I couldn't get any investors for the first round, but luckily I'd saved a bit of cash from my sort of previous business, and I was able to put in £50,000 to get going, and then I was able to go to a sort of family and friends round and sort of get sort of people who like SEIS and EIS. It's not very useful in property usually, but in tech, SEIS financing is like pretty much a free bet for people who are rich enough. So it's okay, it's easy to get sort of 150 grand because there's literally no downside for the investor. They can get all of their money back from the tax regime. So, but it's very, very important that you understand that it's very easy to get that sort of first £150,000, and it becomes much, much harder as you go up. You can get a seed round based on reasonable traction and a good team. But once you're at sort of Series A, raising sort of £5 to £10 million or more than that, you really do need a really substantial business with great unit economics. What I've learned is over the years is that investors can be really, really fickle, and like exactly the same business one day can be like the hottest thing in the world and total dog shit. So there's a big element of luck. But ultimately, if you get your head down and you build something of real value with real traction, investors will tend to come to you, and they'll be sort of trying to give you money, especially if it's like a really unique proposition that can potentially be very, very large. They'll be just throwing cash at you. I think this has always been the case. There's a story where Elon Musk, who was founding his X.com, as a payment company before all of the other stuff that he's done there, some South Korean investor just wired him the money without any documents at all, and just hoped that he kept it, because it was just such a hot business to be in. And it is possible to create that sort of heat in a deal, but there are very, very few businesses that make it all the way through that process to actually making money for their investors. And because of what's called the preference stack, all of the money that goes in comes out first. So if you raise £100 million and you sell your business for £100 million, you will get £0, and you have to be very, very clear that the money you're taking, you're actually able to use it and create a business that is actually of value, which is why there's actually a much lower risk option, which is creating a lifestyle business and selling tons of pizza and scaling it much more slowly. But I'm not sure that answered your question.
You'll find that interesting. Fantastic, thank you. And then the last one, so please think of some questions and we'll just get hands up. Again, this one, bear in mind, context is key on this one. Just a round number for everyone, and I'll pipe up a little something as well. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given? A bit generic, but could be quite interesting. Hugo, do you want to have a crack at that?
Yeah, build something that people want is the most important thing. And I think it comes down to like a very simple principle: is just find a problem and solve that problem really well. I can't really add much more than that, but it is that simple. Finding a problem is the hardest bit of that. There are many trivial problems in the world. Like you can't get food fast enough, so you get a 15-minute grocery app. These aren't really impactful problems. So find something that's sort of hair on fire problem, something that really matters. And if you solve it, people will pay you a lot of money. They'll see a lot of value in it. So look for things like that. And the question is like, how can you find interesting problems? Go and work on the fringe of something, an emerging field, follow your passion, find some form of insight in your life that many people have overlooked. I think that would be my kind of takeaway. I wish I'd done more of that. I wish I'd followed like a bit less conventional Radleian and gone to Exeter and studied history. I wish I did computer science and like followed a biotech path or something like that. That's my advice.
Great answer, thank you, Rory.
I'd probably say consistency. I think all these things take so much longer than you think they're going to take. And it's very easy to see the latest article in TechCrunch and see so-and-so has just raised 15, 20 mil or whatever. But ultimately, I mean, what Freddy's doing 8 years? 8 years now. This isn't my first business. The first 4 years was almost, felt like it was to waste, but it's kind of built and it's kind of led to where I am now. And I think consistency, particularly when you're starting out and you're still trying to work out what that initial idea is going to be, just committing to the process. At least in the initial phase for me, I had a job, or a freelance job at the time, and I moved down to working like 4 days a week. And I kind of used that day sacredly for probably about 6 months, just each week kind of etching away, like, okay, so this thing, let's go and test it, and kind of just being really consistent, and that slowly compounds. And like in the middle of it, it feels really frustrating because you're not really making any progress and you're hearing these other sort of success stories. But eventually you kind of pick your head up, you look back, and you're like, oh, okay, there's something here, and you keep at it. It takes a long time.
Thanks, Rory.
I completely subscribe to what both of these guys have said. Resilience and consistency, and just continue, like keeping on, really, really important, and staying as close as you can to the customer, if not being the customer, is super, super important. What I'd add to that is sort of strong convictions weakly held. Is a great piece of advice I heard, which is like you have to go sort of all in on an idea until you have enough information that it is the wrong path, and then you use the information that you've got to sort of pivot to what looks like the better thing, and then be all in on that. Otherwise, if you try and sort of, I heard boil the ocean earlier, if you try and do too many different things, or you're just flip-flopping around, you can end up burning out pretty quickly, and you won't necessarily build anything valuable.
Great, thanks, Freddy. Thom, anything to add?
Yeah, all really good advice. I would say, I think the thing I was always very nervous over when we started is like, turns out one or two other people have done pizza. So there was always this feeling of like, I mean, the number one response we always got was like, pizza, are you kidding me? Like, it's been done. And I think that is, to me, like, you know, if you've got something you think is a twist on it, or you think you improve on it, like, Google, you know, everything's been done, fact. So just don't give up on your idea if it's not completely novel, because mine wasn't. And I'm still here, so that's good. So yeah, I think go for it. And the other one, I mean, it's kind of more my advice, but I'm going to go with it. Doing it with someone else, like, it can be really, really hard, and it can be really, really amazing. And both of those extremities, where it's less hard with two, and it's better with two. So like the whole thing just shifts that way. So I don't know whether you guys did it with two or one, but I couldn't have done it on my own. I would have definitely given up, and I wouldn't have enjoyed the fun bits either. But my brother was quite annoying as well. It's got its downsides.
Yeah, no, thank you. I started my business with two other guys to begin with as well. I totally agree that sort of sharing is great.
Good, yeah.
I just added one other thing. It's not going to be right for everyone, but I think it can be a good tip. Is something my uncle told me, is if you want to do your own business, maybe write down the top 5 or 10 things you are personally interested in or fascinated in or passionate about, and see if you can find a gap in the market, do something better than someone else, maybe focus on something in those 5 or 10 areas you're more likely to be interested and passionate about. And after all, we're all likely to be working 5/7 of your life, or maybe as an entrepreneur more than that in your working weeks. If you're interested in it or passionate about it, that can really sort of help fuel your adventure. Right, let's open up some questions from the floor, or I think we've got questions maybe coming in on WhatsApp and stuff as well, so please fire away, please.
Hi, Rupert Gaither, I'm chairman of Invest UK. We do about 10 to 15 investments a month, so we're very, very active in the early stage startup. And one of the things that I've observed is an idea really more than a question, is really understanding the difference between needs and wants. And you said look for something that people really want, and I would disagree with that. It's look for something that really need. And this idea of hair on fire is a really interesting one, because they need to have their hair, the fire in their hair put out. And the reason this is so important is, first of all, it generates opportunity, but secondly, and just as importantly, which is often overlooked, it generates the commercial rationale of the business. And I've seen lots and lots of ideas that are really good ideas, it's just that they haven't actually thought about how they're going to make money out of it. And you can make money in extraordinary ways. So if you take the price of a bottle of water in Sainsbury's is 50p, you take that same bottle of water to the middle of the Sahara Desert, that same bottle of water is worth £5.
Yeah, but the person in the Sahara Desert might not be able to pay for it. And that's
they might. Absolutely.
I actually completely disagree with
that. Okay. My point is not specifically about the Sahara Desert, but the point is by establishing needs and the pricing model on needs makes a big difference. And I would say that with Freddy, your business, what you identified there was a need, and because it was a need, people were willing to pay for it.
People wanted to be able to drive each other's cars. Like, a need is definitely not what you should build towards, because people can need things that they aren't able to obtain and unable to afford.
Well, then we disagree. There we go.
That's good debate.
It's a hot debate. Love it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hi, sorry, Jonathan Quick. I'm in the last 3 weeks of about to leave the army, and sort of venturing into London life. But I think I've had a few ideas over the years, and I think the biggest challenge I found, and it would be great to hear your advice, is taking are there any resources or what sort of steps to take that initial, take an idea and actually either just build it, or just how do you get that sort of first momentum going?
Okay, so thank you. So we're trying to repeat the questions for people online may not be able to hear your questions. So it's about when you're just starting out, any resources to be able to help you on that first stage of the journey, maybe a bit how you did it, I think things like that. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just taking it from that idea to actually getting the wheels moving.
Getting the wheels moving, getting started.
Yeah.
Anyone want to have a crack at that? Sure. Thanks, Rory.
Depends on how advanced you are with the idea that you have. I think if you're still ideating, like something I did was, there's a friend of mine who, he was like 3-4 years into his business, he had like 40 people in his team, and I sort of convinced him, like, can I just come work with you on some side project, can I just be in your office, can I be around you, worked like ultimately 4 days a week, but if you found something where you could work 3 days a week, being in an environment where you're stimulating, you're hearing these different ideas, you're being exposed to stuff, is a good like breeding ground whilst you start formulating things. And then I think the kind of process I went through was, there's a couple of ideas that I'd kind of go through, and I had a couple of people I'd sit down with each week and kind of debate them, and then I'd form like a really brief kind of MVP, literally like a one-pager that pretended as if it was a real product, and then I'd go out and try and sell it. And it was, for me, it was all about getting pre-sales. And actually the first contract we got, we didn't actually have any product. It was just, actually it was more of a friendly customer that we had, but I was able to sign it before, and that gave me the validation before I really spent anything on it. I think it's so easy to go out and, you know, spend $2,000 on your brand before you've got any money in the bank. And really that initial phase is much around proving to yourself that it's worth the time you're about to put into it. Because as soon as you go in and raise money, you've then committed to at least 18 months or 2 years to get that money back. And you really want to prove it to yourself, to de-risk it for yourself before you kind of go and put anything more like substantial into it.
100% agree.
Chat about that.
Build conviction for yourself. And one of the things that I did actually starting off was I just rang up who I thought would be the nearest competitors and asked them why they didn't sell that type of product. And the response coming back was, well, actually, we tried to sell via an app, and actually it wasn't possible. I was like, interesting. I think it probably is possible. But you'll actually get you get so much information back from sort of sharing your ideas far and wide as you possibly can, specifically with the people who are absolute experts in the market, and ultimately they might come and work for you. So it'd be useful to have them on board at the earliest stage anyway.
I think it's well about getting your idea out there as well. I mean, people get quite precious about it early on, like, oh, you know, sign my NDA or whatever, but they're not really the risk. You know, they're really going to go and drop everything to go and build it. Probably not. And it's also, I think, as well, kind of that kind of need one thing. I think the way I always saw it was, I want to build something that people are definitely going to pay for. So I think the second time round, you know, the first time round I did a skiing meetup app. It was kind of, oh, that'd be a nice idea, and it kind of fell within a passion, but there wasn't really a business to be built, or if there was, it had to be at such a large scale before we could monetize it. It just made it so much harder to kind of achieve any outcome. So with this one, it was like, well, let's go after something people are already paying for. Yes, it's boring, but people are already doing it, which is fantastic because it proves there's already a budget and people are paying for it. You can just go and find your own twist, take it to a different niche, or market it better, or, you know, personally I'd go out and look at something that's already working, maybe in a different market, and apply it here.
Like pizza. Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, the number one thing is just ask people, like you guys said. Like, people love telling you all of their secrets. Just ask them. Like, just go and ask them and be bold and get in there and find out, exactly why it wouldn't work or why they're not doing it now, and don't open the Sahara Desert.
Yep. Great, thank you.
I'm interested to know, less for Hugo, so far, how you find people to come and work with you. What have been the absolute shockers, and what did you learn from it?
So how did you find people to come and work for you?
Yeah.
What were the shockers? How did you learn from it? Okay, thank you. Was that for Hugo or not?
Well, I'm figuring not yet for Hugo.
Not yet for Hugo, sorry.
I mean, you've got more people working for you than pretty much.
Yeah, it's really interesting because obviously, you know, you guys are employing people with the vision and the millions and the proper office job and all the snazziness, and we're obviously employing a lot of people who earn £10 an hour plus tips, which is it's a very different life commitment you're asking for. So it's horses for courses, right? When we hired our MD, it was a big thing. My number one thing for hiring, by the way, is just like meet the person in a place where they have to interact with other humans that are not in the interview and see how they do that. Number one tip. Like if they're bad people to a taxi driver or a waiter, they're probably bad people. No offence if you're those people. Sorry. But so we always do that. But it's really hard. And for young people, we've got to accept that 95+% of the people are not joining us for a career. They're joining us for something to pass 3 years of their life if we're really lucky. It's just make it fun and like anything, like you were saying earlier, learn what makes them tick. What do they actually want? I was the first person to go, no one wants to work like Deliveroo drivers. That's just not, or Uber drivers. That's, they're throwing it all out and there's no security. Turns out I'm 100% wrong. That's how people of 20-something want to work. They want to work. They want to wake up this morning and go, it's sunny. I'm 100% not going to work today. I'm going to go sit in the park and I'll work double when it rains. So, we're kind of looking at the barrel of that. Like, how do we get a pool of young people who, we're literally almost like throwing services. They have to be trained up to a certain level, and then we're throwing them services like almost within 24 hours notice, because that's what they want. So it's a very, very interesting challenge. But yeah, I think the obvious ones are obviously just giving people a way for their voice to be heard. Essentially, it's like a number one thing for us. Like, even if you're a KP, we have a platform where you can go on and say, you know what, if we did it this way, we'd save X, Y, and Z. And there's a number of examples where that's paid off, and we've paid that person a big bonus. So, like, giving people a voice is such a big part of getting them to be excited about working for you.
In terms of hiring, you're just not going to be very good at it when you start off. You're going to hire a lot of people who are crap. The most important thing is to get rid of them as quickly as possible. When you get it wrong, and learn from your mistakes and iterate and get better.
That's the number one thing of, like, hold on to them because it's the nice thing to do for them, but actually the 10 other people around them who have to work with them
as quickly as possible.
Get rid of them ASAP, because all those 10 people are like, oh my goodness.
Did you get rid of Hugo?
Hugo got rid of himself. Need to. He was with us for 2 years, so he was well past the getting rid of stage.
Have you guys done anything in the sort of pre-hiring stage to get to know whether you'd get on with these people more, like take them to the pub or?
Sorry? It's almost impossible to tell in the interview process. How someone's actually going to perform in the role. It's like the higher up you go, the more and more difficult, because people get better and better at selling themselves. The best thing to do is get sort of 80 to 90% sure, and then get them in the role and make sure that you hold them to a probationary period, and if they're not succeeding in the role, get rid of them as quickly as possible before this damage is done.
With the first couple of hours we actually just orchestrated a bit more like a trial period. It was only like 2 weeks, but it was like really clear cut on what success was. And ultimately, when you're really early stage, it's as much for them to buy in as it is for you to buy into them. So it's a nice way of just like de-risking it.
Some good tips. So is that okay? Yeah. Brilliant. Yes, please.
On the other side, what would your advice be for people who are joining an early stage startup as an employee?
So the question is, what would be our advice for people joining an early stage startup as an employee? Hugo, do you want to crack at that?
Having had the privilege of joining Cuvva, I would generally say join a company like Cuvva. You want to not just blowing smoke up their class here. I was going to say something really bad about me later. I would say, like, they're probably optimised for one or two things. One, optimised for an incredible company, and that isn't necessarily a company that's got the TechCrunch headline, loads and loads of money. It's actually a company that has incredible product market fit. And you know this by you either use it yourself or know customers that use the product, and they'll tell you, like, I love this product. And that was the same in Cuvva. Like, I knew a lot of people that used it. I used it. I was like, this is cool. I would like to work for Cuvva. And on the other side of the coin, I'd say the second thing is do something where you're going to have a huge amount of autonomy. And that probably lends itself to joining a very early stage startup where you're like 24, 25, and you're like head of finance or head of growth or something. It's a bit ridiculous. It's a title, but you have so much, sort of blank canvas that you can work your magic with.
Great tips, thank you. Anyone else? Right.
Yeah, the higher the valuation, the less you should join. Like, genuinely. Once they've raised their big rounds of capital, that's when, like, they're starting to get column inches, but actually it's much less valuable for you as an early joiner to go and join once they've done that, because you're just not going to get any equity that's worth writing home about. You want to join. You want to try and pick at an earlier stage and be an investor yourself. And imagine I'm investing all of the money that I have, because you are actually investing all of your time, which is basically all of your money. And would I want to invest every single penny that I've ever earned in this company? And when you get to early stage, it's not really in the numbers; it's really in the people who are running the company and whether or not you back them. And so part of the interview process, a good chunk should be you getting comfortable that the person opposite you is somebody who is competent, knows what they're doing, has really done their homework on the market, and knows how to scale that business and make it successful. And then if you find that person, latch on really hard and strap in, put your space helmet on.
I think also before we start tonight, we're having a chat with Thom about when's a good time to do this thing. So it might be a bit of a risk compared to maybe traditional career, but you're doing it in your 20s, maybe before you've got kids that you want to send to Radley and things like that. It's no maybe perfect time, but it was. You mentioned, Thom, it was a good time to do it. But you weren't tied down with children and other super costs.
Everyone always
like
says to me, like, how did you take such a big risk? And it's like, there was no risk. Like, I literally had a job I hated, no mortgage, no marriage, no kids, game on, and started on a Barclay card. So, yeah, I think that's right. I don't have much advice for starting rocket ships, but yeah, my only thing would say, like, if you're bringing like expertise of your own, it's not always a win to be in a completely autonomous environment, because if you're going like, this is how this should work, and there's some crazy founder going like, screw that, we're going to do this, that's actually not that empowering. That's pretty. So yes, you might have a big chunk of equity, but you might not enjoy it that much. So I would say it's definitely, obviously, for getting a big chunk of it, that's great, but there is a point where a bit of structure will for the right person bring more value than just the Wild West.
Just one thing I'd like to add to that is that a lot of people think joining a startup is like joining an unpaid internship, and it's really not. The startup ecosystem in London and San Francisco, Berlin, is very well developed, and it's a bit of a crass point, but like you can earn a lot of money. Like they pay incredibly well, and sure, they're not paying investment banking salaries, but for an early grad, they can often pay way better than the graduate scheme if you find the right angle and kind of look behind the curtain.
Thank you. So in the blue jumper.
Thank you. I have a question for you, Thom, about the early days and your conviction. I think often listening to the other guys and like wider conversation, and entrepreneurship is often about the kind of tech, solving pain points, first move advantage, raise money, go quick. Was the process different for you? And if so, how did you kind of stay keep the conviction? It wasn't like saying there were people making pieces before you.
So the question's about keeping a conviction despite other challenges going on.
In a sort of lifestyle.
Yeah, lifestyle business.
Over the tech approach.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. Like the thought for me of like someone piling a whole load of money on and being like, go and make me more money, that just would destroy me. Like we literally made money on day one, but we didn't make very much money, but we made a bit. And then you felt like you're playing this kind of game of lifestyle fun thing, which is great when you haven't got mortgage and all that jazz. I found the envelope recently where I worked out that the business needed to turn over 100 grand a year for it to support me and James to like get out of our horrible advertising jobs that we hated. And I think we turned over 100 grand last Saturday. So it's kind of it's just like it's a completely bizarre place for us in that like we kind of feel like we've done it and someone else should go and take it on. But I think that the point is like that is the number one challenge, like resilience in your idea, and like the amount of times that we kind of messed it up. But I think the fact is, honestly, like we were having a great time. We were like two guys in our mid-20s in the middle of Soho, meeting all these cool people, going to backstage at festivals. I think probably highlight of my life was being on stage with Bonnie Tyler singing Total Eclipse of the Heart. And you're just like, doesn't matter how much equity you've got or not, like this is awesome. So like, you've got to, it's horses for courses, it really is. And like, I genuinely, hats off to you guys. I don't have the resilience or the mentality or the fight to do it, but I enjoyed it and had a great time. And if anything, now for me, it's almost like, how do I get that bit back? How do I not lose that bit? Which is,
I assume you've still got 100% of your business between you and your brother, though.
No.
Oh, you haven't?
No. Yeah, I mean, you can't open restaurants with, you've got to have proper money. But we still own like control and share between us, like over 50%. So
in tech, you end up with very, very small amounts. Yeah. I think average at exit is like 10% for the founder.
Yeah.
So,
but you end up with all the sort of shares that let you vote and all that jazz.
Well, only if you've done extremely well and you're in the US.
I famously told Will Shue of Deliveroo fame in 2012 that his idea wouldn't work. I went and had a beer with him last week and I was like, Will, I think I owe you an apology. Well, I think it worked for him. Yeah, interesting.
There's also, many of the famous entrepreneurs and business people, they've all had successes and failures, right? Yeah. Most of them have had failures along the way. So
yeah, we started a limoncello business. Don't do that. Not a thing. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much, guys. Yes?
I'm sure when you start, or still to this day, it's all-consuming, you know, all your energy every evening, every weekend. How do you find work-life balance, or do you just go all in?
I think that's a great question. So the question is about how do you find the work-life balance, especially when you're starting out. It can be very, very hard work. Rory, what would you like to say about that? I think everyone have a quick answer on that one.
I think the first time I got it really wrong, and I kind of put so much time into it, and I'd kind of be up silly o'clock in the morning doing these hours that I thought I was making breaks. I was like putting everything I could, but actually if I stood back, it's probably not really the most productive use of my time. And again, it comes back to consistency, because it's like, well, you've been doing this for 7 years, it's a marathon with like little sprints along the way. You've got to pace yourself. And there'll be periods maybe when you're shipping product or trying to get a deal across the line that it will be really intense, but it takes, you know, you have to pace yourself. So I'm a lot more intentional now about how I spend my time than I used to be. I wish I'd done that before.
What do you do? Do you have, you know, sort of self-imposed rules, or?
So like at our business we have like flexi time.
I will always be on the back of the mind where the problem
Yeah, it's always on your mind. You're always thinking about it. It's hard to like shut that off, but sometimes that can be quite stimulating because it's just always thinking about it. But even like now, like on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I don't have like any internal meetings and like things like that I'm intentional about to just build a little bit more lifestyle to it, so that I can persist for longer.
There, as like a founder, as a leading someone leading a company, there is literally an unlimited amount of work that you can do, and you've just got to be really, really intentional about what the work that's going to move the needle is, and what the work isn't going to move the needle is, and try and make sure that you're doing the work that really, really shifts the business. I think in the early days, you really can't do anything impactful without working pretty hard. As you grow out and you get lots of lovely revenue in, and you're able to employ people to sit around you, you can start to build that sort of resilience, which you will need over many years. It takes 10 years on average for a business to get to a point where there's going to be any liquidity event at all. You have to be ready to spend the next decade of your life doing this thing. It goes back to idea as well. You really want to be really passionate about something that you're going to spend the next decade on. Cuvva have just launched a trial for the next 2 quarters. We're going to work on 4 days a week, really intensively, high focus, and we're going to take 3-day weekends, and we're going to see how that goes. And are
your staff excited by that?
I think they were delighted. Yeah, Hugo was like, I can't believe I left.
I was actually going to say,
and we're going to track it really heavily. But there are a bunch of studies now that show that actually working really intensively for 4 days and taking a much longer break at the weekend can actually increase productivity and obviously increase attractiveness in terms of hiring as well. But we'll be monitoring that closely, and we'll see in a couple of quarters whether or not that worked. But we've got an idea of what would have been produced over those 2 quarters, so we'll see. And you can start to sort of build stuff like that into your workflow. At the end of the day, you're the CEO, you're the founder. You can make up the rules, which is kind of the best bit.
Do you also, maybe Tom, you could answer this a little bit. Do you also manage to say if it's a weekend, I am going to go and be with my family, get drunk with my mates, and you'd switch off for a bit? Have you managed to do that along the way?
I can now. Unfortunately, the weekends are our busiest times.
Yeah.
But I mean, to be clear, I'm not making much pizza, and if I was, it would not be a success. So, I think. But you're right. Like, I don't know where you are in terms of like kids, wife scenario, but I have all of that, and it's amazing. And in the early days, I did not give it enough time, and now we're at a place where. The crucial things, once you get to the place, hire people who are better than you, and then you don't have to worry about it. So we now have MDs and head of people and ops directors who have run restaurants for a hell of a lot longer than I have, and there is no version of me that's awake on Saturday night going, is this a problem? Whereas at the beginning, that's all you do.
Yeah, don't be scared of hiring brilliant people.
Getting to the scale where you can hire people who are much better than you is the
moment.
Absolute key. That's the sprint. You're sprinting to there, and then once you've got to there, then you can start to rely on the expertise of actual real professionals, and not someone who's kind of just winging it.
But you've got to pay them more than you, which hurts.
Yeah, that does hurt.
Yeah.
I just also add, I think, especially in the early days, it can be such a sort of blancmange of stuff to do. Like Freddy said, there's an unlimited amount of stuff you could do. But I think it's important to set flags in the sand, little short-term, medium-term targets, so you don't have to do sort of, where do I start? And also celebrate your successes when you go along the way, both yourself and your team. Because I think that's really important, to be positive, have a good night out if you've done something really good, and otherwise it's just like relentless. So celebrate the good times as well. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, good evening. Ed Quick. I was going to ask a question about how you deal with competitors in your initial startup. When you come up against someone that's bigger and more established, and you realise your product or your idea isn't so unique. But actually, I think that's kind of been answered: being passionate, being resilient, keep the good fight. Freddie, for you, you're a little bit more established. How do you deal with the kind of young upstarts that are trying to sell an hour of insurance for cars now?
So questions like how to deal with competition, upstarts. I'm just going to repeat for the people watching on video. How to deal with upstarts, competition coming along once maybe you're a bit more established than they are.
So another Paul Graham quote: startups don't die of being murdered; they die of suicide. It's your fault usually when you go down. It's not some other competitor in the marketplace. For us, there are 30 million cars in this country. And that's a lot of people who might need to borrow one of those. There's a huge market, and there are a couple of people who have come into the market. Admiral came into the market with a competitive product. We're like, oh shit! But actually, we just focused on building the best product for our customers, and we've got a completely different niche to them in what is an enormous market. If you just keep your head down, focus, and stay the course, and really just keep focusing on customer problems and keep building to those customer problems, you don't need to worry about competition. And it's when you get distracted by competition, that's when you can really commit suicide, because you're so worried about what they're doing that actually you're not focused enough on your own customers, and you don't end up actually building something that's valuable that people want.
Yeah. I think we have one over there. Yeah.
I imagine we all say that you want to build something that you face, a problem that you face yourself, right? But there must be a certain amount of flagging it, from accounting to legal, that kind of stuff. And you guys, I don't know if you're professional experts in that, but how do you get over that initial flagging it stage?
Try not to go to jail.
Yeah. So the question about how not to blag it, especially in the early stages. That's a good tip. Also, you can outsource, right? I hate accountancy and all the numbers side, so I outsource my accounting to an accounting firm to begin with.
Yeah. I used to always be like, fake it till you make it, and then I watched The Dropout, and I was like, maybe just be a little bit careful about how much you fake it till you make it.
Don't commit fraud.
Yeah, but you've got to, you've absolutely got to just go in both feet and you'll figure it out. YouTube can solve a lot of problems for you. I'll tell you that for free.
There are very few problems that you can get into that are totally impossible to get out of.
Yeah.
I remember not really properly understanding how VAT and insurance work together, which by the way is enormously complicated. And our head of finance turned around and said, this is in the early days when we didn't have it. He said, I think we owe HMRC £500,000. I was like, really? We're actually ultimately quite lucky in that situation, but we did manage to unpick it and build our way out of it. And that's basically the most trouble you can get into, as long as you're sort of not breaking the law. The risk that people think exists in starting their own business is really just the opportunity cost of their time. It's unlikely that you're going to, especially if you start a business at an early age, you aren't going to risk a huge amount more than losing 1x your money or 1x your time. And I think a huge amount of very, very talented people out in the world should be out there actually creating businesses rather than working for professional services firms. Although Savills is fantastic. I think that they have a misunderstanding of what the actual risk profile looks like of starting a business where they really understand the problem.
Does that answer your question? Do you have an?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry, yes.
This question for Thom. Obviously, you're in like a business which is pretty popular. There's quite a few pizza places out there. But like, is there sort of a sense of pizza places working together, or is it always a sort of struggle to make your own niche in your own business unique?
So about whether you can collaborate or make your own niche and that sort of thing.
Like on Deliveroo, you can order a pizza. There's quite a few places that come up.
Yeah. Well, and this is what I was talking to Will about. I was like, how do you add that emotional connection that you can get in a pizzeria with like your brand that you like and like all that, flirting with the waiter or waitress, that bit. How do you get that into the Deliveroo experience? Because it is a very unemotional experience. I think that we're never going to collaborate with other pizzerias to be like, well, why don't you just move a bit that way and we'll move a bit that way, and that would be great. But we do collaborate with all of them. So like we go and have beers with all the people who operate pizzerias in London, and we chat about all the similar woes. And I think, hospitality by its very nature is full of people who love people. And so like actually it's the most collaborative, I've ever been. Whereas I've been in retail briefly, and it's like, I think Topshop's main goal was basically to like kill other retailers, which is like just so not what you get in restaurants. So yeah, from my point of view, like, it goes back to the thing of like just asking. Like we started out, we had nothing. We went and met all these guys that run, we met the guys from Francomanca, we met the guys from Santa Maria, asked them all of the questions, and they share it, and we're still kind of mates now, and that's the way to go. And I think, and also you can call them up and be like, well, how are you doing here? And, if you're running a burger joint here, should we open a pizzeria here? That's the way it works in our industry, and it's the way forward to me. But yeah, no one's kind of moving out of your way, for sure.
A lot of people like speaking about themselves, don't they? So people open up.
Most people love it more than anything,
Yeah. Good question, thank you. Yeah.
Thom, another one about restaurant terrorism. What's been one hardest moment or process?
What's that? The hardest process he's gone through? Hardest moment or hardest process?
What was the hardest moment we've been through? I think, there are a couple. Those moments where you step away from your baby and then someone almost like throws out the window, they're the bad moments. So I remember we had our first weekend ever where we'd hired our first manager in Dean Street, which is our first pizzeria on the corner in Soho. And we were like, let's have a weekend off, get out of town. And we'd basically, we'd put on, because we're marketing geniuses, a cream egg pizza for Easter, which had a cream egg in it. And that was all great, everyone was excited about that. And then the manager decided that it tasted better with Nutella. And then someone came in with a nut allergy, and she hadn't told anyone that she'd changed the recipe to this pizza. And it was a full, Pulp Fiction moment. But with the worst soundtrack. And so those moments are genuinely your whole kind of stomach drops out, essentially. But yeah, actually looking back in 10 years, there have been relatively few of those. So you've got to be super careful that moment doesn't mean that right, and to be back in again, cancel everything. You've got to keep moving forward. But that was a particularly tough moment. I think you were looking for a less sort of anecdote-y answer, but I didn't come up with one. Maybe I'll think of something actually helpful.
Yes, please.
So you say one of the best ways to start a business is identify problems of other people. What's the best way of going about doing that?
What's the best way of going about identifying other people's problems?
You don't want to identify other people's problems. You want to identify a problem you faced. And so I guess where you are at the moment, guessing at school, where you're trying to work this out and trying to guess other people's problems, you never guess someone else's problem. So try and get yourself in an industry or job role or whatever it is where you feel the problem very viscerally. For example, when working at Cuvva, I was struggling with marketing data over and over again. It's just really tricky. Through no fault of Cuvva's, it's just hard to extract. And taking that to what I'm now doing and solving a very similar pain point for e-commerce companies. They're struggling getting marketing data out, extracting and working with it. If I was 18, I would have no idea if that's a problem. I was concerned with other things. And to give you an example, at university, I had all these stupid little side businesses and problems that didn't actually exist. So the classic one is everyone at university starts a student discount thing because they think that the students need discounts, but that's not a problem for small businesses, so they never offer student discounts because they're in a student city. And so that's something that I've kind of learned over time, is like you have to feel this problem very viscerally in your role. So yeah, go work for a company and discover your own problems.
Thank you. Yes, please.
For those of you who did sort of have a more traditional career prior to stepping into entrepreneurship, was there a tipping point where you decided to take that final step before you commit?
So was there a tipping point in your previous career that made you do something? Similar question is, what was your trigger to want to be more entrepreneurial, set up your business? I think, Thom, you hated your job, but
I have a very clear tipping point. I was in advertising, and we had to basically like sort of shepherd these like creative geniuses through their life and like convince like the clients that they were creative geniuses. And I had this amazing moment where we'd sit for hours and debate like, whether a voiceover on an ad was slightly better than another one. I had this amazing, glorious moment where I accidentally played the same ad to a room of people twice and then watched them debate for half an hour about which one was better. And I was like, I think it's my moment. I'm going to go that way. So yeah, that was my like real clarifying moment of like, oh, it's all nonsense. Okay, great. But I don't think there was. I think I always wanted to do it and tried to get a few out. But yeah, that was the moment where I was like, I need to get out of this.
Okay. Rory, how about yourself? What was your tipping point or trigger moment?
I think the first time round at dropping out for Durham, there wasn't. The first time round, there wasn't really a tipping point. Okay. It was more an exciting opportunity to go to the States or something. But the second time round, I knew I wanted to do something, but I hadn't really worked out what it was. And at the time, I was freelancing with this like Bitcoin mining company, and we were working quite late trying to raise some money. And there was a couple of weeks back to back we've been kept in the office quite late to try and get this deal across the line. And it was moments like that I was just like, what am I doing? This isn't my own vehicle. I haven't got any equity in it. I need to do my own thing. And then that's kind of when I started getting up early to go and get out and just put in a couple of hours each morning and kind of exploring ideas. And that was kind of a moment for me.
Thank you very much. Yes, please. Oh, sorry, one over there. We haven't had someone.
Right, this is more a question again for Rory. But when you have your product and you're ready to start selling, and you don't have the luxuries of case studies or previous content, how do you actually go out and sell? How do you find people in small businesses as such to actually buy your product?
How do you find people in small businesses to sell your product or service? Yeah. Okay.
There's probably different things you can go down. The first bit would be finding someone in your industry who can like make a comment, like a quote, and you can kind of be quite generous with, they're a customer or something, you just have their name on it and have that quote and let them infer what they want. The next thing down would be, potentially finding a friendly company who are like, look, can I just put your logo on this? Or can I do like a friendly case study? And just sort of, again, use that kind of inferring side of things. And then further down is just, I guess, being really candid with those first kind of customer to like, look, can we do a free trial or something? And again, just capturing that logo or that kind of name and using that as credibility. And you slowly start piecing 2 or 3 of these together, and you make it out like, oh, we're trusted by these 3 logos, but you make it look like there's loads. So you just infer that there's loads. And that just slowly starts building momentum. And particularly on pricing, I think, the sooner you get something in the door, even if it's really, really cheap, by the time you present pricing to the next person, you're presenting it off the shelf. You kind of give the narrative that, well, they're paying that, even if you've just 10x'd it. And it's all about the narrative, I would say.
Thank you. Yes, please.
What's been your experience and opinion of consultants? Because obviously they're not like you guys, but they're paid quite a lot of money, so they must know something.
What's people's experience of consultants? Anyone want to answer?
They can be fantastic operators. Personally, I don't really enjoy the absolute detail, the minute detail. So I have to bring in people to the business who are able to really, really latch onto the detail and nail it. And people from consultancy background tend to be extremely good at that. Also, people with accountancy degrees as well. But anyone from finance or consultancy seems to have been pretty good.
Okay. Anyone else want to use consultants or anti them? No. Okay. Was there a question over there? No. Yes, Caroline.
Sustainability is obviously a big thing across the board for businesses these days. Is there, it may or may not affect some of you, but is there a sustainability drive, or has to be a sustainability drive in your business areas, particularly, I guess?
So the questions about sustainability, have you had to have it? Is it becoming a bigger drive to have sustainability within the business and operating?
I mean, absolutely. I think, from a non-cynical point of view, it's just something that I'm really interested in. I think we're working hard on. So, we've just opened a pizzeria in Selfridges, which is entirely focused around sustainability and how we can move that on. So it's everything from regenerative wheat to seeds made out of pineapples to growing wheat on the roof, the whole shebang. But I think more commercially, I think both the people we employ and certainly the people who eat with us is massively important to them now. And it certainly will be more important to them in 10 years' time. So I think you've got to get on the bandwagon.
As the younger generations are coming through, it becomes increasingly important.
I just think, responsibility in the brand you choose is going to be huge. It already is huge. So it's a massive part of. Well, I've just come from a massive strategy day where I'm banging the drum for it all, and it's amazing how our board are just I don't get it, and it's it's because you're not going to see it. It's all good. So it's huge for us.
Out of interest, is anything happening at Radley College? Do the boys see anything that's happening more sustainable things at college?
We got rid of bins in our rooms.
Very good.
Yeah, they're decent.
Yeah. What about in the sort of dining area or cups and things like that, or cocoa?
Still quite a lot of plastic.
Yeah.
Oat milk cocoa? Surely at this point.
It's got to go.
Done. Good. So there's a question in the back, and then I'll come to you.
I was going to ask, do you think Radley's been a help or a hindrance in your journey?
That's a great question. So the question is, has Radley been a help or a hindrance to you in your journey?
I only discovered that Hugo was at Radley in the final interview when I read down his CV to the bottom. It's a massive problem for me to hire ex-public school boys. Really, really huge. I get I'm trying to create a big, diverse organisation, and honestly, I know it sounds bad, but consider not putting it on your CV if you're joining a tech company. It will be a massive hindrance. Obviously, the education you've got is fantastic and will make you an amazing employee, and you shouldn't be discriminated against on the basis of that, but you will be if you're trying to join a technology company.
Yeah, it is contextual that it may not be for every business. Tom, you look like shocked at that, possibly, or not?
No, I mean, I think we all had an incredible education, and that that sets you ahead. I agree. There are certain places that you've got to slightly watch it. That's just true of life, though, right? I mean, you don't you've got to read a room and go, this is going to be about that. So I'm going to read this room and go, yes, it really, really helps. Do it.
I hate to say it, but every single person in this room is largely the same person. And I think just look around in terms of what you're wearing, your backgrounds, and I think the collective thought here is probably not very diverse. So you're very unlikely to have novel ideas from the background you are. So work out how you can expose yourself to new things. Radley in many ways great school, but I think fundamentally the thing I took away from it was I'm not very good in an institutionalized environment, and so I try to run with that as opposed to lean into it. Maybe is a good thing to do, but it's not painted by numbers here. I'm not saying anyone in this room is a bad person. So I wouldn't be ashamed of it. It's nothing to be ashamed about, but yeah, just sort of try and navigate that one for yourself.
I was discussing earlier with Elizabeth that I think luckily in a way Eton and possibly Harrow are more famous names with the masses, and Radley's slightly more under the radar. And I've got an older son who works in media, and he absolutely has to cover up the fact he went to Eton. But it's not right for every single industry or job. It can of course be a benefit, but
there's always the old St Peter's College. So what?
Let's come back to you. So one behind. That's you. No, you.
Oh, sorry. So, Nick and the panel, obviously speaking for the home team, Radley, I think we're very, very aware actually that I think probably people criticise ourselves a little bit. That in terms of preparing people moving into the business world, I don't think probably we've been that successful. I think that's certainly very much part of our strategy moving forward in terms of I mean, it's interesting, I was at an event on Friday night, talking to a couple of boys at university, who actually said it was the wrong decision for them.
Yeah.
So I think kind of opening up opportunities for boys to go down different paths, because you all tend to follow the same routes, don't you? And the same 4 or 5 universities, you're very narrow-minded in. But I just wondered how you felt at school. Did you feel you kind of got any direction in terms of entrepreneurship, or do you feel it was a real kind of barriers were there to make life difficult for you moving to the next stage?
Yeah. So I think the question for the people watching on video is, when we were at Radley, did we feel there was a bit of a grounding in entrepreneurship and that sort of thinking? For me personally, not really. I was speaking to Elizabeth before we started, and they're trying to ingrain that more. I don't know about you boys. Do you feel you're learning a little bit more about your sort of potential careers in entrepreneurism, or is it purely academics?
Yeah, we get quite a few talks about it.
That's good. Yeah. So I think it's getting better. I don't know what you guys felt about your time at Radley. I think there's a lot of focus on GCSEs and then A-levels, but did you feel there was a bit more creeping in about life after school?
I think it's important to know what the options are, but generally with entrepreneurship, if you need direction, then it's not for you. There's a magnetic pull to working for yourself and building your own thing and making your own decisions that you're just not going to have to be taught.
Did you feel that at school though?
Yeah, 100%. I was definitely in business at school. Not necessarily illegal. But I think from my memory, there could have been a lot more sort of deep dives into lots of different career paths and what they actually meant. Then you can spend some university thinking about it, I suppose.
Elizabeth, do you want to pop in on that? Because you were talking before we started about some of the interesting things they're doing there.
Thank you. So we're looking to start to launch in September an entrepreneurial program, and we're looking to really cover the ages from 13 to 25. Not just as a bolt-on, but actually looking at the education that we're already doing, but actually naming some of the qualities that are already being taught and actually putting it more into the entrepreneurial spirit. And realising it doesn't mean everyone has to open a business, but having those skills and enterprising skills will enhance whatever path you take. And as Richard said, very much about broadening the ideas of what paths you can take. So we haven't quite started yet, but we're working on a programme to really start integrating this now. And interestingly about diversity, we're very much hoping to partner with one of our partner schools at Birmingham, completely different demographic, and actually see how together the girls and boys, because it's a co-ed school, and our boys can really work together and actually find some of the things that we talked about this evening. So sort of watch this space, and actually, as we unfold this and put it out there in the world, please help us shape it. As I said a number of times, I don't want the draft programme that we've created today, I don't want it to look like this in 12 months. I want many more hands and voices to make it really relevant to those at school now and those who are in the market.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
Can I ask, is there anything, sorry about that, is there anything in the curriculum that talks about this?
That's what we're trying to connect it into. I don't
So is there actually some government?
1 hour on a Tuesday or Wednesday on
that's
learn entrepreneurship, but it's actually to do an audit of our curriculum first to see where we can begin to really align what we're doing and begin to think more of a commercial mind, even among DOMs. So how does it interact? So it's not just class and school and then the world, but seeing how the two they can connect better.
Yeah.
We need to make a bit of a cultural shift at Radley, and it's not going to happen overnight.
Because how many people don't go to university, and certainly how many are celebrated for not going? It's pretty interesting. It's a massive, massive change.
So Simon, you want to make a point?
Build on this point, because I'd like to ask you a question, which is probably a difficult one to answer. All of you. What do you think are your personal qualities that have made you as successful as you have been to date? Because as an investor in startups, bizarre as it may seem, the idea or the concept isn't actually the issue for me on the yes or no decision. It's the people who I'm going to be investing in. So throw that open to you.
I'd say two and pretty bloody minded. That's my two qualities.
Take bloody minded, definitely.
But that means I didn't peel off and go and work for a big finance company and waste my life.
That's not your character, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can convince people that I'm a great dresser and all that stuff. I don't know. We never really came up against that. It was much more like we started it from nothing, so we didn't really have to convince anyone that it was the right idea, apart from our parents, which were very much not up for it. So,
flip that. Forget the investors. What's made you successful, character-wise, where others have started pizza companies and failed, and it's, other equivalent types of business?
I think I really care about the people. Like I wake up I don't look at sales or EBITDA anymore at all. I only look at like who's progressing through the ranks, how are we developing new people. That's the only bit that gets me excited. And like, I feel really sad that hospitality, particularly in this country, is looked upon as like a dead end. And actually, I was saying to someone earlier, like I think it should be national service. If every single person, and I mean everyone, went and did their engineering degree, so mummy and daddy in Radley are happy, and then come and do like between 1 and 3 years in hospitality. Not only will you learn you'll go from managing no one to managing a team of 30 people in 3 years. You will deal with awful humans and learn how to deal with them. You'll deal with people above you, people below you. You'll have this incredible education in humanity, and I guarantee the world would be a better place if everyone did it. Guarantee it. Now, I'm not saying that it's ever going to happen, or that but just that idea that like going to work in a restaurant is going to be a dead end, I totally disagree. Like, I genuinely believe like doing it for a couple of years, especially now when you don't have to get on the kind of like Mary Poppins banking train and just do that for 45 years. Go and do it for a few years. Worst case scenario, you'll have an awesome time. And you might get laid for the first time. You might not.
Live stream.
It might be what they're most interested in.
I always add persistence. I think like the business I'm doing now is like data compliance. I knew nothing about it to begin with, but just kind of plowed on and just worked out how to do it.
Probably can't add a lot to this, so I'm not successful yet with all of these guys. But I just think a big gumption goes a long way, just going to do something.
Can I come in on that
Sure.
point? Because I think it's incredibly important. One of our biggest drivers is about the people.
Mm-hmm.
And we divide it into 3 things. I'm sure Freddy's going to disagree with me. In 3 things. First of all, do we like them?
Yeah, great.
Because we're going to spend a long time with them. We've actually got to have some form of personal relationship, and one would hope and expect that Radleians would excel at that particular point. Secondly, do we trust them? Because inevitably they're going to be given money, and we want to make sure they're not going to run off with it or be reckless with it. But the biggest one is, are they problem solvers? Because every entrepreneur knows that things always go wrong, and the absolute worst kind of entrepreneur is the one who runs away at the first whiff of grape shot and leaves you holding the baby. And in my experience, 80 or 90% of problems that happen in business can be solved. And Freddy, you mentioned this point about really sitting down and working out what is the solution. If you can demonstrate that to an investor, then I believe you are, generally speaking, investable.
Some great points. Thank you. Right, we've got about 5 to 10 minutes left for questions, so we'll try and be quick and sharp in the answers. Guy.
I'm just wondering how you guys retain your talent or your employees. Is that stock options?
Great question. So the question is about how to retain the best talent in your staff.
The inflation rate at the moment is insane, like tens of thousands of pounds a quarter. People's salaries are going up in the market. There was an enormous influx of cash. I don't know about your sector, but in ours there was an enormous influx of cash in 2021 into early stage technology businesses, and that cash is now in these businesses fighting for a limited pool of talent. The prices of salaries are just going through the roof. We use equity. Everyone joining Cuvva has equity in the business, and it's meaningful. So if we do really well, they will be able to sort of buy a flat or something. But ultimately, it's moving very, very hard in the direction of what can you pay me now? I don't care about the flat that you might get in the future. Like, I'm getting offered 120 grand over here. Why are you only offering me 80? Well, you've got 1 year of experience, so this is what we can afford to pay you. And ultimately,
it's getting pretty scary out there, especially for really, really early stage companies.
Outside of pure sort of monetary things, Thom, Rory, have you done anything sort of softer things that maybe?
Yeah, we only have really the soft measures to play in. I mean, we don't, we pay, no one gets the minimum wage or anything, but we're certainly not able to pay big numbers.
So what's maybe one example of something you offer or do to people that you think makes them stay with you?
I think genuinely like the opportunity to like have an input to it and feel like part of something is a huge part of it. So like, as an example, our head chefs we're just about to do, like they all can pick their own pizza in their pizzeria and have it on the menu. It sounds like a tiny thing.
No, it's a big thing.
But it's huge. Yeah. And I think you've got to let people have input and also just be there for them and be a real person and like take them out for a drink. I mean, it's little things. But,
totally, yeah.
We see it. So we see interestingly so often people leave for that extra, in our case, £2 an hour, and then come back because they're like, oh yeah, it's really horrible out there. Okay. Yeah. So it's not only the money for sure in our sector.
Yeah, great. Thank you guys. Yes.
Do you think you're always entrepreneurs, or do you think entrepreneurship is something that you've developed or you could develop? I know Freddy's answered this, so it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts.
Rory, why don't you have a crack at that? So was it whether you're always entrepreneurial or is something you can sort of grow and learn about?
Yeah.
Be quite quick with the answer.
Yeah, I think for me it was just kind of natural growing up, whether it was I had older siblings, I'd have friends over for parties in the morning, I'd cook breakfast and leave a hat out for cash, or like at prep school I used to hand make top trumps and sell them. There was a few inklings like that I guess started it for me. I've always been there.
Hugo, what about you?
Yeah, largely agree. I think it's a spectrum. I think you're a productive asset if you're in a job, you're creating value, and like being entrepreneurial is a kind of extremity of that. You're just trying to create loads of value. So you probably are entrepreneurial, everyone can be. It's not kind of genetic or taught. You just, you'll find the problem and you're going to work on it and you'll create some value.
And the fact that everyone's here probably means you've got some interest in it or are entrepreneurial. Good, thank you guys. Any more? Yes, please.
Do you think there's value in taking a traditional career path out of university and then using, like Hugo was saying about working in industry to like get some new ideas, or just as like a safety option, like first 3 years?
So is the value in maybe taking more traditional sort of career pattern and then doing something from there?
Yeah, definitely. There's this huge media narrative about young entrepreneurs being the best and the most brilliant at these child prodigies. Like go work for somewhere is probably the best bit of advice I can give. Like it's kind of countercurrent to what I've done, of course, but you'll learn so much along the way, and it's really not painted by numbers. You can start a company if you're 70 years old. You can start it when you're 20. Like there's not a timestamp for this. Just do what's right for you. Like you'll kind of feel that ebb and flow of if you're really invested in something, just kind of get behind something you really care about. It's probably the most important thing, and you'll do great work from that. Very cliche, but don't get too caught up on the media narrative of young successful founders, because it's not all that.
Great. Time for one more question, maybe? All done?
Oh no, he's pitched it one too many. Could have had that nail.
Oh, here he is.
I don't know about any of you guys, but you're in a sort of family business. Any of the others, and what's, I'm sure it's more extreme, up and down.
Yeah, I mean, it is and it isn't. Like, I think the thing you have with a brother is, someone mentioned about trust, like you can trust him completely. I mean, I say that, he has messed up a lot, but you absolutely know that he's not out to get you. And I think obviously the real danger with a co-founder that you might not know that well is that there's some kind of like ulterior motive. But yeah, I know. I mean, the brother. I don't have any other experience or anything else, but we haven't fallen out yet, which is not the salacious answer you're looking for, I feel.
A lot of people say don't go into business with a friend, but do you think it might be different going in with a brother?
It's gone. Yeah.
I started Cuvva with a Radleian, and we nearly didn't become very, very good friends.
Nearly didn't.
So we didn't speak to each other for like a year and a half.
Wow.
He left after about 9 months, and it was pretty bad. So I actually wouldn't go into business with a friend again. Find someone you respect professionally deeply and know and understand and have worked with before, if possible. And I started with them.
And has skills. I'm lucky we have no skills that we share at all, me and my brother. So look for someone who's got, if you're into numbers, look for someone who's creative or whatever.
That's a good tip. Brilliant. Okay, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for your brilliant questions. More importantly, can we all put our hands together for a fantastic panel and their answers? We're just going to hand over to Caroline to tell us what's going to happen next.
Well, I'd like to thank Nick, our excellent compare for the evening. So we are delighted to be able to be running these Rally for Life events in person again, because their purpose, first and foremost, has always been to help members of the Rally community to network with each other, and you can't do that on Zoom. So it's great that you're here to do it face-to-face tonight. Now this year we're focusing our business event programme on the theme of entrepreneurism. So we've had an event in January, we've got this event today, and we've got another event in November here, just in case you didn't know. Thanks. On November the 15th. So please pop it in your diary, because then you can continue these conversations and start to really build this strong ecosystem. So we're focusing on the theme of entrepreneurism for two main reasons, and we've touched on some of that already. Elizabeth spoke to it. Firstly, because we've noticed a significant number of old Radleians are now going on to start their own businesses, a really significant number, and we want to support them as best we can by building a strong and connected network of Radley entrepreneurs. And the second reason is because we want to encourage current Radley boys to develop an enterprise mindset before they leave Radley, and support those young entrepreneurs who wish to start their own businesses whilst at Radley. Some of those boys are here tonight, so please do make the effort to talk to them. You are ideally placed to help them, and you're in fact critical to help them understand and broaden their view of the world of work. So we've also set up an entrepreneurs group on our online networking platform, Radley Connect, which I must pitch to you, so please do join it. There is a group on there where you can contact people with common interests. And finally now, I also want to mention a competition that we're offering to win one of 3 places worth £10,000, sponsored by Rupert Gaither. It's an entrepreneur experience programme offered as part of the Innovate in Britain Incubator programme. So this is a 12-week programme, both virtually and in person, which teaches the tools and skills needed to become a successful entrepreneur in the UK. So as I said, Rupert Gaither, who's here this evening, can talk to you about it a bit more if you want to pitch for this. It's quite a simple process, outlined on here, and there's a leaflet on the front desk. So think about that if you wanted to get some more experience that way. So now on to the networking part of the evening. So all of our speakers are going to go out, and they will have a podium or a booth that they will stand by or sit in. This is your opportunity to go and talk to them a little bit more. I'm going to ring a bell every 5 minutes or so, just for the first half an hour, which is your opportunity to exit the conversation and keep moving. And I think that's quite important, so you can maximise your time here. It'd be great if the more experienced among you could try and talk to the less experienced. I know they really value it, and some of the more experience can come across as intimidating, so if you reach out to them, I think they would really value it. So thank you for coming. Good luck with your networking. There is some Dash water outside, which I have to promote because it was kindly one of our other entrepreneurs who was on the previous call, Alex Wright, sent it over so that you can try his product. So he knows what he's doing. So there, entrepreneurism in action right outside. So go network. Thank you.